All right, Alexander, let's talk about Starmer's alleged Labor Starmer, the chief of staff for Starmer, their alleged interference in U.S. elections. The Trump campaign is actually, I believe they have filed a lawsuit, or they're about to file a lawsuit against Labor and the Harris campaign. And Matt Taibbi and Paul Thacker, they did a report where they had information from a whistleblower who's associated with this group in the UK that they have been working with the Harris campaign to help her campaign defeat Trump, using the strategies that they used to help Starmer win in his election, and they also are targeting Twitter X. One of the objectives of this group that's helping Harris is to kill Musk's Twitter. That's what they said, kill Musk's Twitter, and just go after any media that's hostile to the Harris campaign. That seems to be one of the techniques that this Labor associated group uses. Anyway, this is the UK. It seems if you go by all of these reports, it seems like this is the UK interfering in the US election in a very open way, much different than what they did in 2016 with Christopher Steele and Mifsud and who else, Halper, and all of these characters who have disappeared. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them have kind of disappeared, teaching in Oxford and Cambridge, and now no one talks about them. But the way things went down in 2016 was more covert. We had to do a lot of reporting to uncover all of this, to unravel everything that was happening. But a lot of it was happening in London with Russiagate, or a lot of it had its start in London with Russiagate. This time around, everything is a lot more out in the open with regards to these associations, these groups in London. I believe one of them is called the CCDH, the Center to Combat Disinformation, or something like that. And then you have this other organization associated with the Labour Party, and now these people are in Starmer's cabinet, and they're helping Harris. Anyway, this is a pretty crazy story when you take a step back and realize that if all of this is true, and it does look like this is true, this is the UK obviously getting involved in the US election process. So what are your thoughts being in the UK?
Well, I think it is true, and I'm going to say straight away why. I mean, first of all, there's been no convincing denials. In fact, there's hardly been any denials. And it's been very, very widely reported here in the UK. Lots of people have been writing about this, even in mainstream media. And there's, by the way, a great deal of anger about this, because a lot of people in Britain understand what a reckless and unwise thing to do this was. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's no secret that the British government, the British establishment, the Starmer government, but not just the Starmer government, people far beyond that, basically want Harris to win the election in the United States. The Labour Party has historically had very close links with the Democratic Party. Again, that is, widely known. And as you absolutely correctly say, the British have played roles in American elections before. Christopher Steele, by the way, is still very much around here in Britain. He appears on television every so often. So, I mean, this isn't something completely out of, nowhere. But to do this in this way, to do this openly in this kind of way, and to think, first of all, that, a couple of hundred activists in the United States are going to change things, shows such a complete failure to understand the United States and the fact that, American society and American politics and electoral politics are very different from those in Britain. That's the first thing to say. And it so completely misunderstands American electoral politics. And it also so completely misunderstands the fundamental interests of Britain that it leaves me incredulous. The Harris campaign, the Democrats are not going to be grateful for this. For them, this is an embarrassment. The Trump side, the Republicans, are going to be furious, or at least they're going to pretend that they're furious. In fact, from their point of view, it is a gift. And of course, if the outcome of the election is that Trump wins, we will have in the United States a president of the United States, the British government, the British Labour Party tried to stop becoming president of the United States, which is, again, incredibly bad idea. And as to who was behind this, well, I'm going to make a few quick observations about the way in which the political system is organised here in Britain, or at least specifically the Labour Party, especially since Keir Starmer became leader of the Labour Party. It has become extremely tightly organised, extremely centralised. There's been very, very tight control from the centre, from people like Starmer's chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, who was previously his campaign manager, of the whole, all the various branches and structures that make up the Labour Party. And it is inconceivable to me that a move like this could have been made without McSweeney himself, the higher leaders of the Labour Party, and even and perhaps especially Starmer himself being consulted. Now, of course, if Starmer was not consulted, well, he is the Prime Minister. You would have thought that this would be the moment for him to assert his authority, to say this is all a terrible mistake, to apologise to the Americans, to Trump and Harris too, by the way, said this is all wrong, we shouldn't have done this, this is something we were not involved in, to call all of these people back. But of course, he is saying nothing.
Man, Starmer is so bad. He's eclipsing Johnson, Truss, Sunak. I mean, I never thought I would see someone actually make the other guys, Sunak and Truss and Johnson, look good. But Starmer is doing it. He's accomplishing it. I mean, what I think might have happened, I don't know, you tell me. It seems like the Harris campaign believed that Starmer had an incredible election victory, which is false. I mean, you could explain why it's false, and it seems like the Harris campaign believed that these consultants, advisors from these groups in the UK were actually going to give her a strategy to win the election in the United States. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it looks like they bought into it because they believe that these people did a great job with Starmer's campaign, that they had the strategy to do something similar in the United States. I mean, why would she fall for this? It shows very bad campaign judgment on Harris's part.
It does. I mean, it shows complete misunderstanding, again, of British politics. I mean, at one level, it's easy to understand if you really don't understand British politics very well, if you don't inform yourself very well about what is going on. It's easy to understand why there might be an illusory belief that Starmer won some great thumping victory in the election, the recent election in Britain. But we've discussed the election in Britain in many programmes on this channel. To repeat again, this was an election in which the governing Conservative Party was profoundly discredited and was going to lose the election. Nobody, apart from the very reduced loyalist Conservative core, was going to continue to vote for them, and those are overwhelmingly people above 60 in certain places. So the Conservatives were certain to lose. But despite the fact that the Conservatives were crashing to the worst possible defeat, Starmer and the Labour Party only won 33% of the vote, which is less than Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017, and not much higher than the proportion of what Jeremy Corbyn won in 2019. on a very reduced turnout, 58%, which means, by the way, that Starmer won fewer votes than the votes that Jeremy Corbyn won when he was leading the Labour Party in the 2019 election. In fact, if you're talking about the British electorate, only one person in five voted for Keir Starmer and his Labour Party. This against the most unpopular government, the most unpopular sitting government, Sunak's government, in modern British history. So far from this being a glittering, successful victory, if you actually look at numbers of votes and polling numbers, and I should say the turnout collapsed because there was so little enthusiasm for the prospects and offer. It went down from the usual high 60s, which is what we see in elections in Britain, to below 60, to 58%. This was, despite you said this is an easy win, the Labour Party, if you look at the actual numbers of people who voted, actually did extremely poorly. I think I am right in saying that they won the election with a majority, with the smallest percentage of the vote of any British political party since the Second World War. Now, because the Conservative vote collapsed even further to the point that there was only about 120 MPs at the end of the election, and their share of the vote, rather their share of the electorate, went down to, I believe, something like 13%. Only 13% of the electorate actually voted for them. That meant that in many, many seats, because of the way the British electoral system works, which is one, the winner takes all, in many, many seats, the Labour Party basically won by default. But that meant that Labour came into office with a huge majority in Parliament, which gives the superficial appearance of a landslide. But a landslide, a victory, where there is no real engine behind it. It was not what they did. It was not because they were popular. It's because the other side was so deeply unpopular that they ended up with the result they had. And of course, since the election, the Labour Party's popularity, the Starmer government's popularity, as we said again in other videos, has sunk like a stone. They're now, I believe, pretty much as unpopular as the Conservatives were before they lost power. So, I mean, this gives you a sense of how completely the Harris people misunderstood the electoral dynamics in Britain. Now, as for the Labour Party, I suspect that they completely misunderstand the electoral dynamics in the United States. My guess is that they looked at all the articles and all the reports that were appearing back in July, August, when Harris became the candidate, and it seemed briefly as if the momentum was flowing strongly in her favour. And they said, let's go and give Harris the help she needs because she's going to win. And we want to be a part of that. And again, that again shows a failure to understand American politics, domestic politics, electoral politics. But it also would be an unwise thing to do, even if, as is of course still possible, Harris wins. I mean, outside countries should not interfere in American elections. Certainly not in this way, period.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what happens? Final question. What happens if Trump wins? What do you think happens?
Well, I mean, for him, first of all, I should say this is the gift that's going to go on giving. I mean, he's going to be able to play on this for all it's worth. And he's doing so, of course. He's making, as you see, he's bringing court cases and he's going to plug on with this. But there's no reason to think that Trump would like Starmer anyway. They're completely different personalities and people. They have completely different sets of beliefs. And I think that what is going to happen is that we're going to have, if Trump is elected, a president who doesn't like the Prime Minister of Britain. Has got even more reason to dislike the Prime Minister of Britain. I mean, in fact, he's going to be, angry and resentful, and he's going to say, if the Prime Minister of Britain comes along and says, I need a favour from you, I've got this problem on a trade issue, can you help me with it? Or we've got some problems on the currency markets, can you see what you can do? The kind of thing that goes on all the time between leaders, by the way. Trump probably won't want to answer the phone. It's as simple as that. And it might have even bigger effects over going forward, depending on how far Trump decides to move on the foreign policy agenda that many are assuming that he's interested in following. But, it could lead to other things, reductions in intelligence cooperation, disagreements about foreign policy, cutting the British out on discussions about Ukraine, which will hurt the British and upset them an awful lot. Do all those sort of things. So, this is a stupid thing to do anyway. And by the way, if Harris wins, I don't think it'd be that much better, because after what has happened, the Democrats will want to make absolutely clear that, they didn't win the election because of any help from the British, and they will do what they can to distance themselves from the British too. So, from every conceivable point of view, this was a stupid mistake. I think that if they did get a call from Harris or from the Harris people saying, can you give us some advice? They would have said, well, certainly we can tell you how we won, how far you can translate your, what we did to your election. Of course, we're not able to say, but we did X, Y, Z here in Britain. Maybe if you do the same in the United States, that will work for you. You'd limited it to something like that. It wouldn't have done any great harm. But of course, they couldn't help themselves. They had to throw themselves in, and well, we see the disaster that's playing out. To repeat again, there are many, many people in Britain, including, by the way, as I happen to know, people on the left who are not happy with this at all. They understand that this was a stupid mistake, and it's coming from a government that is making too many mistakes. It's making far too many mistakes in the very, very short time it's been in office.
Yeah, very dumb decision from Starmer, and I can't wait for the next time Starmer says that Russia's interfering somewhere in some election. I can't wait for him to come out and say that. Yeah. Take a look in the mirror, Starmer. Anyway, we will leave it there. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch like what we are wearing in this video today. Use the code October20 to get 20% off from our shop. The link to that code and to our shop is in the description box down below. Take care.